Welcome back, me sweet revenants, to the Adavilios archives, where every shadow holds a story and every secret waits to be uncovered. Tonight, we dive deep into the lavish halls of the Opal district, where power is measured not just in wealth, but in deadly games of wit and seduction. Our debutante performer steps into the light, her target cloaked behind a mask of gold and secrets. Will she emerge the hunter or the hunted? If you find yourself captivated by this tale, remember, the Obsidian Directorate watches what you share. So spread this story carefully, like a whispered secret in the dark. Support our broadcast by joining the patrons who keep the shadows alive and the stories flowing. Share wisely, listen closely, and never let the necrologist silence the truth. Before we dive back into tonight's tale, a quick message from one of our loyal backers, Dan, the Rider Lord of Pride. Now, Dan might look like he stepped right out of a mad scientist's workshop, covered in scars and more metal than muscle. But don't let that fool you. He's got a heart as big as his reinforced frame. Known for his quiet kindness and fierce loyalty, Dan's been keeping the shadows safe and lending a hand whenever he can, even if his berserk mode tends to turn heads. From all of us here, thanks to Dan for backing the signal and standing with the outcasts, the warriors, and anyone who's ever been underestimated. And now, on to our story. Erica had been in similar places before, accompanying Lucius to one event or another while tracking a target. But this time, it felt different. Today, she was the debutante performer, not the supporting role. It was up to her to hold the limelight without flinching. Lucius was there, of course, but he was only an observer tonight. This mission would only go as well as she could handle it. He was merely here to grade her work. At least that's what he said while briefing her about her target on the way here. It was impressive. Erica had never seen Lucius pull off mundane before, but he could do it with as much ease as being the center of attention. For tonight's event, he was simply dressed as a manservant. Her manservant. A plain gray suit, a wig comb just enough to pass as kept, yet not enough to be pompous. He wore makeup as well, though not the usual flair he masked himself with. Mute tones and dull highlights. He simply looked mundane. He was too good at this. He caught her staring at him, and she flinched before turning back out the window, waiting for their carriage to pass the gate to get checked, like all the other guests. It seemed that Lucius took this as a teaching moment then. If you're going to convince anyone you belong, you'll have to pick your jaw off the floor, Venomet. Remember, as soon as we step out of this carriage, you are not Erica Bastos. You are Lady Ophelia of House Cortriel, and as such, these meager balls are nothing more than mild entertainment. It was hard for Erica to take him serious while he looked like a common butler. But he was right. She needed to be less impressionable. Easy for you to say, she muttered. This has always been your stage, not mine. I've always been the one in the shadows, the closer. You can't expect me to just be the lure so easily after that. I can. I am. And I will. I trained you. I am the one who knows when you're ready. And I say you're ready now. If you refuse to believe in yourself, believe in my training then. You hold the right cards. All you have to do now is play them. Erica realized there was no more time to protest. Their carriage had been stopped, inspected, and allowed to pass. The hunt was afoot. She took in a deep breath before getting into character. Right. I am Ophelia, of House Cortriel. I trade in slaves and sugar. My house runs exports to Arcos and West Inari. I detest gladiator sports, and I enjoy the violin. She went on listing her character to herself, reciting her persona like a mantra. training she'd done before as a servant in the background or a baker's assistant. Always someone in the back, never the lead. With one last deep breath, she got into character as the carriage stopped. Luscious stepped out first. After all, he was her manservant, her attendant. Wouldn't be right for a lady of her status to open her own door. He came around to open her side, and again it felt strange that he was the one tending to her for once. Still, it wouldn't be the first for someone like Ophelia. And Erica, she needed to embrace that. She stepped out of the carriage with as much grace as she could muster, being sure to keep herself centered. For a performance to be believed, it must feel natural. This is your true nature, never an act. She repeated Lucius's lessons in her mind. Thankfully, wearing a mask helped to hide some of her doubts, if only partially. Her dress would do a lot of the work for her. It was an elegant dress, of course. But beyond that, it was allure itself, tight in all the right places and just loose enough where it needed to be to invite a peek. If worse comes to worse, she simply needed to accentuate her generous assets in just the right ways to do the talking for her. Whether she was the most attractive person or not in the ball didn't matter. She was trained by the most alluring person there is, in the most seductive techniques there are. These finishing school brats didn't stand a chance. She entered the ball on her own. Meanwhile, Luscious was left to tend to the carriage. From this point forward, she was on her own. Now she remembered the instructions and the face of her target, which was pointless, given that they were in a masquerade ball. But thankfully, Luscious thought ahead. He received information on what their target would be wearing. He would be wearing a gold and blue Volto mask decorated with ruby tears down one eye, the colors of his house's crest. A suit split down the middle, one side red, the other blue as well, and wearing a snake's tail lotus boutonniere. Beyond that, she remembered his features from the coin, and Luscious explained that his hair would be autumn red. It shouldn't take long to find. There were not a lot of redheads in Illysia. It was easier than she thought to get lost in such a home, sprawling chambers, elegant hallways, and lavish rooms. Regardless, she made her hunt seem inconspicuous. A chit-chat here and a wave of the hands there was all she needed to get by. She also had to be a lure, and to do that she needed to stand out with everyone, not just her target. Be interesting enough to turn heads, but subtle enough not to let them stare longer than you want them to. At most, be the talk of the night that no one can remember properly. Finally, she found him. Don Almiro was more handsome than she'd expect, taller too. He was broad, certainly no soldier, but she had no doubt he could carry himself well enough on his own. She paused before making her approach. She needed to remember he was just a target, nothing more. It didn't matter how chiseled his chin was, or how captivating his dark brown eyes were. By the end of the night, he would be a corpse, and it was her job to get him from what is to what was. And so the dance began. She didn't approach him, not at first. Instead, she made it a point to circle around him, talk to a few guests here and there, but never out of eyesight. Brush against him from time to time. Let him smell her. Let him feel as though he is taking the initiative. Every now and then she would look over someone's shoulder to him, always with a smile, as uncomfortable as it felt. As she kept playing the game, she felt more emboldened. Erica was more attractive than she gave herself credit for. Her emerald eyes caught almost as much attention as the curves of her chest. By themselves it would have been enough to turn heads, but the corset that was threatening to break her ribs only enhanced their appeal. Her raven hair and tanned skin stood out among most of the rather pale guests, a trait she was relying on most. She had to explain it was because of her interest in naval affairs, fascinated by the crude valor of sailors, is what she called it. Wielding herself as an asset and a weapon of manipulation felt empowering. If she wanted to, she could convince a third of the attendees to jump off the cliff by batting her eyes and just leaning a step in the right direction. But it wasn't them she needed to interest. It was Don Almiro. Finally, she caught his interest enough that he made his move after talking with a few of his friends, most likely encouraging him to woo her. Now the real performance began. When she saw him approach, she made it a point to act as though she wasn't noticing. Instead, she made a turn to a nearby balcony overlooking the city. Again, a tactical choice. She needed to focus on what he was going to tell her to respond, and it was hard to do so while competing to drown out the noises and people around her. She had to admit, the city looked beautiful from here. The estate overlooked the bay of the city, and the lights flickering from across the busy streets shimmered and illuminated the night, as if stealing the stars from the sky and shining them back at it. Ships and zeppelins of all shapes and sizes moved about the ports and skyports of the city. It was almost enough to make her forget what she was doing here in the first place. Almost. Her instincts to look over her shoulder still pushed through from time to time, and if she was going to play this game, she needed to play where distractions were minimal at best. Naturally, he followed. Give them chase, but never outrun them. They need to believe they can catch you more than you believe you have them. I do love these masquerade balls. Don Almiro walked beside her as she leaned on the balcony railing, a cup of wine in his hand for him and one for her. She took the cup without interrupting him. The work that goes into the outfits is always impressive, and yet I've not been as mesmerized tonight by any of them as I have been by you, Senora. He extended the cup to her. Perhaps you would do me the kindness of sharing your name, miss. He certainly had his charm. Even with a Volto mask covering half his features, he was still showing more than enough to entertain the mind. Again, Erica needed to remember he wasn't luring her tonight, but she needed to make it seem as so. Ophelia, kind sir, of House Courtrial. Erica made sure to shift the tone ever so slightly while speaking to him. She finished with a mild curtsy and extended a hand to him, one that he grabbed and kissed softly. A pleasure and an honor. Miss Ophelia, interesting to find a member of House Courtrial here tonight. I thought that the Courtrial house had been swallowed into the fold of House Silvera. Was it not? He researched his houses, it seems. An unexpected question. Perhaps Erica should have spent more time researching her target the way Lucius does. Still, he prepared her for such an eventuality. The part you play is only as believable as your commitment to it. She may not have studied him as well, but she knew Ophelia well enough to respond. A common misconception, I assure you. Our houses only operate within the same districts and rely on the same ships for trade. Our merger is only superficial at best. But I understand why you would think that. House Silvera certainly has more influence in the market than my humble house. Her answer seemed like it was enough to satiate his curiosity, only slightly. She needed to adjust quickly, otherwise the cracks in her facade would become more visible. But I bore of house politics easily. Perhaps you'd entertain my curiosity for a spell. After all, it seems you've been the center of attention in a few circles tonight. I'm curious as to why you would want to spend a moment talking to a member of a smaller house. If all else fails, strike his ego. Their pride is merely another card for you to play. Whatever interest he had in asking her more about herself seemed to have washed away as she changed the conversation to something he seemed rather fond of, himself. Mostly it has to do with a lot of the same reasons. I bore of house politics as well, Sadly, I do represent the interest of House Rosilva, and sadly that title comes with a few consequences. I can't go anywhere without someone wanting to promise me this, trade me that, negotiate over there. It's terribly dull. There it was, the folly of man, pride. The way he tossed his house's family name made it seem like he was proclaiming himself a prince. Not an unexpected behavior from any of the Elysian noble houses. But as they kept talking, he kept getting closer. She didn't flinch. She had the power here. She was the one interesting him. House Rosilva, well then, I should consider myself lucky that you give me your time willingly. She played into the game as well. Let her be swooned. Let her be dazzled by the weight of his name. She didn't have to play hard to get, just interesting to chase. She needed him to want her, as much as she wanted to leave this place. Indeed you should. I don't give my time to just anyone, and I assure you my interest in you has little to do with trade talks or politics. Direct, too. She shouldn't have expected less. Still, this was moving along all too well. She simply needed to play along just a bit more. Erica stepped closer to him, much closer. She brought a hand to his chest, her finger drawing little circles. She answered his remark with a smile and a soft blush. Is that so? Then tell me, Lord Rosilva. She leaned up against him, whispering into his ear, care to show me just how interesting you can be? The chase was over. Now she needed the right moment to strike. It only took a few more playful bouts and playful gestures to have him hungering for her, craving her. Men were too easy to rile up. After a few drinks and a not-so-subtle tug at his belt, she suggested they find somewhere more private to entertain themselves proper. He was all too eager to oblige. Almiro led her by the hand through to the other wing of the estate, away from the buzz and noises of the party. The estate's east wing was much quieter, the silence almost inviting by itself. Barely any lanterns or candles were lit, and only every now and then did they notice the passing of a maid or servant who'd either strayed from their duties or was scurrying to catch up with one task or another. All they needed to do was stay out of sight as they passed, and there they were, alone, intimate, vulnerable. Almiro opened the door and stepped to the side to allow her in first. No one should bother us here, he whispered. Erica passed by him into the room. She glanced at him one more time and ran a playful finger down his chest. The edges of her lips curled into the smile of a fox, already convincing herself to have as much fun with this as she wanted play with her food first. Such a gentleman. The door clicked shut behind them. Erica, ever the practical killer, took a moment to scan the room quickly before bringing her attention back. Almiro took her to a rather uninteresting room. It wasn't so much abandoned as it was unoccupied. A simple bed, with no sheets, a small desk and chair to one corner, the type of room you'd reserve for visiting family or idle mistresses. There was a rather large wardrobe against the wall opposite the bed. It was the one thing that stood out the most of the room here. But beyond that, the only luxury here was privacy. Erica couldn't have picked a better place to finish the deed if she tried. It was perfect. Now was the time for Erica to put her teachings to good use. But before she had a chance to turn around, he was already on her. He approached her from behind, hands on her hip and the side of her neck. His lips found their way to her collarbone on the other side. His breath felt warm against her skin, and each touch of his lips sent ripples down her back. She allowed herself to be led for now. A practiced sigh escaped her lips. one that wasn't entirely pretend. Her hands reached up and to his shoulders. She ran her nails along his skin, while his hands wandered further into more intimate reaches of her dress. His hands were firm, eager. Every touch was a practiced gesture. She wondered if she was even still pretending. Her skin tingled at the wake of every trail he traced. She suppressed her moans enough to be subtle, but every escaped breath was a challenge to him, a demand to make the next one louder. Erica felt ready to be lost in his touch, to let herself be careless and give in. But she remembered herself. Ophelia might be this eager, but Erica had a reason to not be. She couldn't forget herself. No matter where you are, no matter who you chase or chases you, you are the hunter, never the hunted. Her master's words rang loudly in her head, enough to suppress the urge to let this man devour her whole. Erica turned around to him. He'd taken the lead long enough. Now it was her turn. She wrapped her arms around his neck, met his lips with hers. She could feel the heat between them growing and gave herself to it, if only enough to sell the lie. Or so she kept telling herself. Her hands ran down his chest, undoing the buttons of his dress shirt. One pull at a time. She pulled from his lips as her hand tugged at his trousers, his head swaying along with hers as if urging her not to pull away. Then, with a mischievous smile, she pushed him against the bed and straddled him, her body swaying low as she ran a trail with her lips across his chest, his collarbone, his neck, and his lips. His eager hands roamed the sides of her dress, pulling at her skirts while she brought herself back up, that cunning smile never leaving her face. He was eager, anxious. He'd do anything to get at her now. This was the time then. Erica loosened the laces of her corset, her dress spilling down slowly around her as she reached into her garments and pulled out a small vial, thick with a glistening viscous fluids, the poison. She gave him a look of interest, desire, and longing worn like the shimmering of sand siren serpent scales, an allure to draw her prey into a trance. She reaches down, her lips tracing a line from her neck to her ear before she whispers, "Here, to make the night more entertaining." He reaches for it, his hands gracing her arm. The anticipation swells within her, ready for him to drink it. Then he puts his hand over the top of the vial and pushes it away. "You're sweet, love." He turned to whisper back at her, "But I don't drink anything I don't pour." Of course he doesn't. Ever the cautious blue-blooded brat. This was a problem, but not one she didn't expect. She simply wanted to do it luscious way first, but she felt deep down that it wasn't the way she performs. Perhaps that doubt was what slowed her down. After all, if Lucius wanted to, he could have told him it was poison, and he'd probably swallow it whole if it meant pleasing Lucius. She just didn't have that charm. No matter, the game was still afoot, he was still under her, and she still needed to do the deed. Afterwards, then. Erica doubted she had the charm, but she knew she had the stamina and endurance to outlast him. Besides, what's one drop of indulgence in a sea of murder? She leaned down once more, putting the vial away for use later, and went back to toying with him, teasing him, letting her hands run through every valley and hill of his body, only to be startled by the subtle sound of a door clicking. She turned sharply at it, cursing herself for a moment for letting her guard down, but the door to the bedroom wasn't open. She wondered if she was imagining it. Then she felt hands on her, firm, calloused hands, one on her mouth, another on her arm, then another pair of hands. Neither was Almiro's. She struggled to move, fought for leverage to loosen herself from whoever was holding her. A damp cloth pressed to her face. A sickly sweet smell filled her nostrils, sharp, metallic, and wrong, like the sting of decaying fruits. She felt how she was pulled from Almiro's lap and away from the bed. The rest was foggy and distant after the cloth against her dulled her senses. She remembered how the room moved as if away from her, how Almiro smiled as she was carried away, knowing and satisfied, the way she expected to look at him when he swallowed the poison. The last thing she remembers was disappearing into a frame that wasn't where the door was, but, from what she could remember, was where the wardrobe had been. When Erica regained her senses, it was still hard to adjust. Her blurry vision struggled against the dim, flickering lights of a candle, somewhere out of sight. Her head thundered and she cursed herself a fool, letting her guard down, feeling like she'd already won when her target was still breathing underneath her. She could hear Luscious's voice now, that condescending mock whenever she strays from the path. She put that in the back of her rather sore mind right now and began to assess the situation. As her senses came back to her, she grounded herself, taking in things one at a time. First, what could she see? She was in a room, dark and damp, only light source being a candle somewhere around her, and she could hear the subtle drip of water hitting a puddle somewhere. The walls around her were bare, tattered and bricks. A basement, then. Most likely old Galvian catacombs, these noble houses often built over the bones of the old. The perfect place for things unwanted to be lost in. Then she brought her attention to herself. Her elegant dress had been stripped from her. In its place, she'd been covered with tattered rags like a common slave. That meant they put their hands on her, and that knowledge only upset her more. Still, she needed to focus, assess now, wrath later. This meant she was without weapons, without tools, or so they must think. The assassins of the Velvet Opera always had one trick up their sleeves, one she didn't particularly enjoy using. Regardless, she was never truly disarmed. Finally, she felt the cold stinging her skin from the stone bed she was on, hands and legs both cuffed and restrained. She was taken as a prisoner. She became the prey. Luscious would never approve of this. You are the hunter, never the hunted. His words still ran true in her head. She might not be aware of what's going on, but she wasn't helpless either. All she needed now was a plan. Almiro still needed to die tonight, and she was going to make sure of it. The only difference now is that it wasn't just a job anymore. Now it was personal. And that concludes tonight's act in the dance of deception and desire. But the story is far from over, and neither is our fight against those who seek to bury the past. If the pulse of Illysia's underworld beats in your veins, like, share, and spread the word, but be wary of the Obsidian Directorate's watchful eyes. To keep these stories alive and unmasked, join our patrons, the true allies in the shadows. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and never forget, in the darkness, knowledge is power. Until next, we turn the page.